YouTube, welcome back. Today we're going to continue with the myth busting series. I'm going to walk you through 3 different phrases or things that you might hear spoken about quite a lot. I'm going to tell you whether or not they're bullshit or they're true. 9.9 times out of 10 they're bullshit. Number 1, detox. You'll see this a lot, especially when I'm doing this video now and it's going into the new year. You'll see this a lot. You know, people saying I need to detox after Christmas and the new year, or you'll see even people promoting detoxes. It's a load of bullshit. Okay? Your body has its own way of detoxing, getting rid of waste products. Okay? Nothing you can really do outside of that is going to, bypass that process or better that process. Okay? Anything that actually truly, and people truly believe and think that this is going to help detox your body, half the time, they're actually quite dangerous things to be doing. Not one, they don't do anything, but 2, they can actually be quite dangerous and unhealthy. So anything that promotes detoxing, or anything that says do this to detox your body, or whatever it might be, my personal opinion, just avoid completely. Number 2, lean bulk. Now, this is kind of a myth, and kind of not a myth, okay? This is one where it's kind of in between. Now, the reason why it's kind of a myth is because when people talk about this, or when people hear this, their first thought process is, okay, this means I can gain muscle mass relatively well and not gain any body fat. And that just isn't really true, right? And let me tell you why. Because, now, I'm not saying you cannot gain muscle mass if you are not in a surplus. Okay, so if you're in a maintenance phase, sort of energy balance phase, yes, you might be able to add a little bit of muscle mass. If you're in a deficit, and depending on the individual, yes, you might be able to add a little bit of muscle mass. But in comparison to being in a surplus, okay, so where you're taking in more energy than you're expending, the rate at which you are going to gain muscle mass is going to be slower. And when we're talking about it being slower, when naturally it's a very, very slow process, I don't know why you would be trying to make it slower, right? You want to be making it, or putting yourself in a position where you're going to do it as quickly as possible, which is still going to be very slow. A surplus is going to be that optimal environment, right, where we're going to be able to add muscle mass naturally, almost as quickly as possible, okay, which again is still going to be very slow. Now, the reason why this isn't a myth is because even being in a surplus doesn't mean you have to be gaining body fat quickly over time. You can put yourself in a very, very small surplus. So let's say an extra 150 to 300 calories a day over your maintenance. Okay, that's going to put you in a good position for adding muscle mass over time, and it's going to put you in a good position for not really accumulating much body fat over time. You will still accumulate some body fat over time when you're in a surplus, because not all that energy is going to go towards building muscle mass, right? But it will help at managing body fat levels well over a period of time, okay? So that, in a sense, is really what lean bulk is. When people are talking about it, it's just being in a small surplus while trying to add muscle mass. But don't get confused with it meaning I can add muscle mass well without adding body fat at all, by either being in a deficit or being at maintenance. You're just making your primary goal of adding muscle mass harder by doing it in those 2 energy balance scenarios, right? Number 3, spot reduced body fat. You simply cannot do this, okay? Some areas will hold on to body fat, or the body fat from those areas might, let's say, visually reduce later on than other areas. You can't spot reduce it. You can't train chest and expect your chest to get leaner faster because you're solely just training it. You can't spot reduce an area. A lot of people do abs during the fatless phase because they think it's going to get them abs quicker. It doesn't work like that. Typically, midsection, especially sort of lower midsection, and thighs, higher up thighs, typically around that area, the hips, can often be one of the harder areas, not harder, but one of the areas that take the longest to get relatively lean, right? But again, it can change from person to person. Some people can hold a little bit more fat on the back, some people can hold a little bit more fat on the front. It can be very individual dependent, but you can't spot reduce body fat, okay? It will just come off eventually in time, and if there is an area that's holding on, that just requires you to essentially get leaner. So there you have it. There's 3 more, let's say, phrases or things you might hear about, and now you know whether or not they are true and whether or not to listen to them. Hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please do drop a like. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Take care.